Nigerian elite who have agreed that subsidy would go. But the question is, at when will it go, and how will it be handled? So, Mr. Sowore, what are your views on what has happened in the past 1 week?
I've been involved in the struggle against removal of subsidies since my university days in the 90s. And it is very, very interesting that the arguments for every government that's come and assaulted these subsidy regimes is simple. That because they cannot rein in their friends in the and that they feel that the ordinary people should pay for the crimes and sins of those who are ripping Nigeria off through subsidy. It is time to let it go. And that they make another argument, which is that whenever there's removal of subsidy, they will take the profit from the subsidy itself and reinvest socially in bringing roads, improving transportation, and all the nice things that they're supposed to do that they didn't do. This argument has not changed over the last 30 years of my life. And here we come again. We are going to remove subsidy because it's bleeding our economy, according to them. But nothing has been done to rein in on the people who are using subsidy to bleed the economy. These are their friends within the corporate sector, both at home and abroad. And this is just basically to say to the people, we're giving you a middle finger, especially the poor. We're going to remove this subsidy because it's no longer affordable and tenable. And it's also very interesting and very important to also say that this is always the position of the IMF and the World Bank, that subsidy is not sustainable, but nobody tells you why the rich, the powerful, and the politically connected don't get their subsidies removed. And do you know how they get subsidies? They get it through bank loans, letters of credit, waivers, and we even have an institution in this country that takes care of what the outcome of the responsible political and economic business class engages in, and that is AMCON. AMCON sucks over 5.3 trillion naira, if not more, in terms of cleaning up after rich people. Sometimes there are not more than 100 of them. So my argument and my position has always been that in this country is oil subsidy or petroleum subsidy. We don't call it oil subsidy anymore because they have taken away subsidies from a number of products, petrochemical products. There's no subsidy for kerosene. There's no subsidy for diesel. There's no subsidy for... But I can't find anywhere where, this is outright punishment. And every government that comes into power have done this since the last 30 years that I can remember. And Tinubu is not different. But why his own case is probably more interesting is legitimacy. And I believe that probably part of the reason why the US accepted to send a delegation to attend his inauguration was that he would remove subsidy and announce it once and for all as the most important policy statement during his inauguration. It's a shame.
Sure, yeah. So the idea is that removal of subsidy in itself was not wrong, but announcing it on the...
And I'm willing to debate anybody who says there's subsidy in the country. The people they are subsidizing are the criminals who are well connected in the petrochemical sector. That is what you are punishing Nigerian people for. Shoes. Those are not the kind of shoe sizes that I go for in my life.
But you've wanted to be president, so he is president. Maybe being a president might be one of the shoes that...
There are different types of presidents. There are legitimate presidents, illegitimate presidents who rig themselves into office. I wasn't going to be any one of that, and my position is clear. Secondly, my position is also very clear about fuel subsidy. You can't lump me with those who said they will remove fuel subsidy. I said I'm not going to remove fuel subsidy because I know there's no fuel subsidy in reality. the thing we call fuel subsidy in Nigeria, as our friends have even spoken about it, particularly Shell, is the subsidization of the criminal elite in the country. Like, okay, uh, my friend who was the APC guy, who has now jumped from Buhari to Tinubu, we call them Ajib, any government in power. They support anything. When they closed the border, he supported it. When they put Sowore in prison, he supported it. He supports everything. That's Hassan, I think, the other guy that came before. This guy, that's what they do for a living. That's their own service to humanity. Support everything as long as it profits them. But to go on the side of what should happen, I wouldn't have been a president who supports illegalities or who supports criminality. Everybody that's speaking about subsidy today is referring to one problem: our inability to deal with the economic sabotage that has become part of our lives. So you are allocating subsidies to the poor, but the process is hijacked by the economic elite. They take over the process. They import fuel. Sometimes they don't even import the fuel.
So who are these people? Is it possible for us to unmask them? Who are these people? Who are these people?
You know the oil importers, both local and internationally. You know the NNPC people. Don't tell me you don't know them. Some of them were arrested in 2012 after occupying Nigeria. So you can go and ask what happened to their trial. Nobody was sent to jail. We just entertained ourselves with the process and the names of people who were kind. In 2012, a lot of vessels that reportedly were bringing petrol to Nigeria did not exist. Some of them had sunk in the open sea 20 years before.
Look at the implication of what is going to happen next week. I'm imagining what our world and the streets of Nigeria will look like, because now the last week looked like a lot of queues on the expressways and on our roads. People are groaning on the cost of how much they buy fuel. Now, if the federal government does not yield to the demands of labor, there will be a nationwide strike. There will be protests across the nation. Now, Sowore, I want to know your view. Would you join the protest if labor begins? And also, if you can also answer, because this looks alike, considering the fact that TUC NLC endorsed Labour Party and its candidate Peter Obi, what are your views on the NLC and Labour, the union, the Labour community stand on the issue of subsidy?
Listen, there are two positions on Labour. A lot of people are going to be skeptical about the Labour movement, because when we did Subsidy Occupy Nigeria in 2012, the Labour movement went behind our back. I wasn't in Nigeria, I was in the US, I was involved, and settled without anybody knowing. Before we knew it, everybody had been left on their own. So Labour of Peter Obi they were a Labour party without workers. Go and ask them today. Peter Obi doesn't have a minimum wage position. He only says that he will pay workers every two weeks. No amount. I'm the only person amongst the candidates who is very clear about I'm after a living wage. The second aspect of it is that, yes, you are right. The Labour movement sat there when Peter Obi was saying I will remove subsidies, said nothing about it. It sounds hypocritical now that they want to fight against removal of oil subsidy. But that is not the issue. The issue for me with Labour is credibility. If Labour calls a meeting for us to have a strike or a protest, I'll request for one thing, that the Labour movement or the NSC or the TUC will not have the capacity to call off the strike. It will be calling off of the strike, or the protest will be done by another body that is composed of Labour leaders, civil society groups, several other people that are interested, because every one of us have learned our hard lessons with going to strike with Labour. If you go and protest with Labour, by 12 noon, Labour can leave you there and police will be beating you up. You will not hear from the Labour movement, because most of them are in bed with the system. And I'm not afraid to say this publicly, that the Labour movement has a credibility problem. But that is not to say that if they are genuinely interested in carrying this battle to fruition, I will not join them. I will join them. If they don't call a strike, the Nigerian people who are choking will fight back.